GM, it's Monday, August 1st. We are in August. We remember what happened last August in NFT world. We had some big news this week regarding Tiffany and Company. They have a somewhat unique NFT drop coming later this week. We'll touch on that and everything else going along. All right, Tyler. So we're back. August NFTs. Do you think we are back to what we were last year? It's very different these days than August 1st of 2021. But how was the weekend for you?
It was good, and I love the lead in. Can we run back last August, please? That would be the best thing to happen for those who weren't around. It was just pure euphoria. We went from what 200-300 million a month in volume to 2.6 billion. It's definitely a lot different this go around, but there's some similarities as well. So we can definitely draw some comparisons. But hey, we got some good news this weekend that might spark the August 2022 bull run.
Yeah. So let's look a little somewhat of an overview. This is the NFT project rankings page on luckytrader.com. We see CryptoPunks up at the top, even though the number of sales isn't overly high for them. Like it's still under 50 sales, but it's CryptoPunks, potatoes leading the way. So what are you seeing in this board?
Yeah. Fairly quiet week, pretty obvious from the volumes here. Nothing that crazy. I mean, our top volume project is Punks at 3,200. And man, you called it 48 sales. That seems so low, and it's crazy that it's only up 26%. But the reason they're up top is they got some nice volume here in the last 24 hours on that Tiffany's announcement. And I know we're going to get into that in full detail in a bit. But just since that announcement came out yesterday afternoon, the floor is already up, 5-6 ETH.
Yep.
So that's been some really positive momentum for the Punks. In second, potatoes. I mean, Mainland potatoes to me are kind of cementing themselves as one of the most relevant projects in the space right now. Their volume, of course, down fairly significantly week over week since their initial week of sales. But the floor is up 56% at 1.2. So that's definitely a solid week for them. The rest of the board, pretty much crickets. The Yuga ecosystem combining just for 6,000 ETH. Their floors are pretty much down 4 to 10% across the board. Ape's holding in at 85. It's not terrible. It's not plummeting or anything, but it's kind of slowly falling. But other deeds at 2.2. That's approaching the lowest they've ever been, right? So I think it's kind of raising the question of how low are those going to go? And do those get back into buy range at some point? Yeah, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I think that'll be something that's interesting to watch. I think when I was looking at the Punks right after the announcement, they were around 67 or so. And yeah, there have been some higher end listings, higher end bids. I don't think any that have really hit yet. There was an 800 ETH bid on a zombie, and then the infamous Perugia alien was listed at 9,420 ETH, which I don't know. It's funny. I forget who had mentioned this, but it's funny where like the people who list these, there's only a handful of people that own an alien or an ape, but anyone who lists, it's kind of becoming like CrossFit. It's like if you have an alien or ape punk and you list it or you buy one, you have to make a thread talking about why it's the future. And it's kind of interesting to me that he's dropped it so low because he's sort of made it into such a big thing. And you wonder if some of these people, like, what do you think his reasoning is here? My thoughts are he wants to sell this and sweep the floor up. I think that's what he would do with it. And I think people are seeing how cheap, in a sense, punks are comparatively right now, at least in US dollar terms, where he bought this for about $7.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
If he had $7.5 million right now, would be able to get a lot more punks. So I wonder if that's his strategy with it. I'm sure if and when it sells, there'll be a whole thread on it because he also likes doing threads in general. But what's your thoughts on? We haven't seen it yet, but there was also an ape that was listed at, I think, 5,400. Do you
Mm-hmm.
think one of these high-end ones will get sold here in the near future, or is it just going to be mostly the floors and some of the cheaper, aesthetically pleasing ones?
I think it's very possible. First with Perugia, like when I see this stuff, I mean, my bullshit detector goes off. Like, this guy kind of becomes famous last year for buying, what might be the most elite punk in the set. There's a full thread on how he's so bullish about it. He then made headlines again right before the August sweep. He tweeted, "Hide your punks." The day before the 100 swept, and then the whole market went nuclear, which is about a year ago now, a little less. And here, I mean, he held the punk for 15 months, 18 months, and now he's not putting it out at some like crazy price, right? That's just kind of a fake listing. I mean, he set it at 14,000 ETH, then dropped it to 11, then back up to 13, and now back down to 94.20 and 16 million. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to take the guy as seriously now that he's just. To me, this is just a flip at this point. It's not someone who really necessarily believed in the brand or the project. They're just trying to make a good trade. So,
and is that because it's just about 2x? Like it does seem like this current listing is priced to sell versus like the 14,000 one. Probably not. I mean, to go from 7.5 million to 25 million is kind of a pretty big deal. Like,
yeah.
But in this one, like, I don't know, it's only 1,400 more Ethereum than the highest in ETH terms, which was the other alien punk. So in that sense, I feel like this one is priced at a point that he thinks it could sell because I don't know, you wouldn't want to price it at something that it could sell easily. Like if you put that at 5,000, it would sell, kind of thing. So the interesting question is going to be: is this his floor on listings? Because as you mentioned, like of those aliens, like this is probably the one that should be traded at the highest premium, maybe the cowboy hat, but most of the other aliens are relatively basic, and one versus another is pretty similar. But this one has the pipe, which I think would come with a little bit of a premium.
Agree, but now I wonder how much does the transaction history start to come into play on the most elite NFTs? To me,
You mean
if I was
just
buying,
listing it at all?
well, that and having turned over, right? Like I agree. I think this is probably the most aesthetic alien. It's the coolest with the hat and the pipe. But like, if I'm a serious buyer in this price range, I see that this turned over last year, so I'm going to pay this guy, another. I'm gonna pay him 5,000 ETH to hold this for a year. I'm gonna go shopping for the ones that were minted 5 years ago that have never traded, even if they're maybe a little less aesthetic, because it's a cleaner history. Maybe that's just me, but I'll be curious if that comes into play, and if like the aliens that have turned over in the last year are now maybe a little slightly less valuable to the market. Let's check in on that. I want to check the Grail ape that went up.
Yeah.
Because I haven't looked at this listing. I don't know the history on this one. I want to say this is seed phrase, Danny's.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
All right, so let's see. Okay, so he picked
Which,
this
how
up.
crazy is that? I mean, granted, he spent a decent chunk of change to get it. Like back then in 2020, like that, he spent up for it for 150 ETH, only 71K for 150 ETH. Those were the days, right? So yeah, what's your thoughts here? Because I think there have been a few of these hoodie punks that have gone in the 350 range recently.
Mhm.
Not one with an ape. This is one thing we've talked about in past shows. Is we think this is probably the top ape, if not the cowboy with the 3D glasses. But what's your thoughts here? This one is. Do you think this one's priced to sell at 5.2K?
Yeah, I think it might be. So you mentioned it's probably the Grail ape. It's also the Grail hoodie, which
Mm-hmm.
is one of the most iconic traits in the whole set. Obviously, one of the most favored. We saw a 300 ETH sale yesterday. There's a 360 ETH bid out on one today. So let's take a look at the hoodie floor here.
Because hoodie's also like because of punks, hoodie is a trait that people go after in any other NFT collection.
Oh yes.
One we looked at, I've gotten a little into because they're kind of like a little culty. Is the base ghouls? I don't know if you've heard those ones.
Mhm.
Recently, they've been pumping a little bit, but I got one that had a hood on it because I was like, people just like hoods in NFTs because of punks. So I mean, it is iconic to have a hoodie punk just in general.
It is. I mean, it's one of the most elite traits by far. 295 ETH floor right now. So if you look at this from a multiple standpoint, that's the ape is less than 20x the hoodie floor. Much higher multiple on the true floor, but it's 20x or so the hoodie floor. So that's a fair multiple. It definitely doesn't mean that the market is ready to pay that,
Hmm.
but man,
I
I
think
think
that
it.
VR one would be the one I would go for. I mean, granted, if I had 500 ETH that I was willing to spend on something, but that
It's an
one to
epic one.
me looks like the deal of this whole trait right now.
That one looks good. Um, of course, the 3D hoodie is epic. Any Lux
Yeah,
Beard hoodie is also going to be good. I mean, this one is like the Godfather too, but at 2000 ETH, it's not moving anytime soon. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, at 5470 here, it's so funny. He also discounted at 30 ETH for the Tiffany's pendant in
Yeah,
his
I
tweet.
saw that. He tweeted it. That's funny that he like posted it. I mean, he's one of the more iconic punk holders in general. And I think what's funny is this is a Grail punk and
Mhm.
it's not even his best punk. Because he obviously has the one of one, which that one I have always wondered if that one will ever sell, if he's just gonna hold it as just the holder. He keeps it and oh, that was the set. I mean, yeah, he has like 10 other punks. Like he should be trying to sell off one of the two grails that he has here that are up there. Yeah, this one's just like so iconic.
He
Um,
offered it for 60,000 ETH last summer, and then he said he pulled it because he thought it was live. Uh, Not sure it was live last August at 60,000, but yeah,
I
and he's
mean,
got the Grail
August was
set.
the time to list it.
It was, uh, but yeah, this is gonna be exciting. So if they weren't live 30 hours ago, they're more live now because of this Tiffany's announcement. Maybe we should just get into it.
Yeah.
Um, so we got this hint. So this was 9 a.m. yesterday. The future is here. It's called NFTiff. NFT Tiff. How are we gonna say it? We'll call it NFTiff.
NFTiff is how I've called it.
Coming this Friday, 30 ETH, and we just got this basic kind of teaser trailer. Not much else behind it. The rumor mill started swirling. Immediately got fudded, primarily because of the price point. We can get into that a little bit too later. And then Deepak tweeted with a little bit more info. So Deepak, DT Chain on Twitter, some people have been calling him the brand ambassador. I don't know his specific role, but I think that's probably a good way to kind of summarize his involvement, at least that we know. So he's helping Tiffany, the company, launch this. He tweeted a small thread. But here, basically, what you get for the 30 is you're going to get a handmade custom pendant necklace that aligns with your punk. Comes with a necklace chain, of course, and then you'll get the NFT, which will be your certificate of authenticity and essentially what will be your primary access point to all this. And they're kind enough to throw in the shipping and handling for the 30 as well. So that's what you're gonna get. And it was so interesting. I was fairly bored and around most of the day yesterday. So the narrative arc on Twitter and how it totally changed. So the immediate reactions were all horribly negative. Everyone just funding it primarily because of the price.
But to be fair, and I've heard this side of it as well, the people who can't afford it were funding it, as they say.
Absolutely. And then I think time passed and people kind of started realizing a little bit more of like the magnitude of this.
Mm-hmm.
And here
they gave no info on the first tweet. To be fair to some of the fudders, like they said, click here for more, and you saw this same GIF, and it didn't tell you anymore. So it's like, what am I spending 30 ETH for?
Right.
But yeah. So what do you think about it? Do you think this is accurately priced? Is it something that people are going to want? Clearly some of these holders did desire it. Deepak obviously showing this one, which has turned into a meme now. All these other projects are photoshopping their version of it on. I saw like a Galactic Apes one earlier today, and so he has one, and Alex Arnault has one, who's obviously connected with Tiffany, so he was a big part of this deal. With only 250 of them, I think that's a lot more reasonable that you could find 250 people that might be interested. How many holders are there of punks? Like 3,000 or so?
Yeah, that's a good question. I want to say it's like around 3,300, maybe closer to 3,000, but that's the ballpark.
So only like 10% of holders need to want one. I believe Dees said he was approached on this and said no, that he wasn't going to want one. I think he tweeted that out as well, but I haven't seen too many other holders that were like furiously against it in that sense. But what do you think on 30 ETH for a pendant, a physical pendant of an NFT that you already hold?
Yeah, I've got tons of thoughts on this. First and foremost, I love it. I love the drop. I think it is a huge event for the NFT space and one of the most important stories of the summer, maybe the year. And one of the biggest mega brands in the world doing a real NFT drop. And I think part of the reason why some of the FUD transitioned into more praise was it feels like it was thoughtful. This is, a real luxury jewelry drop tied to an NFT. It's kind of opening up the possibility for several other brands to do, similar types of drops, especially if this one goes well this week. And my prediction is it absolutely will go well. I would set the over-under on sellout for this thing at maybe 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. I think this is going to sell out. I think they said a 3 max per wallet, so it's not even single max. So there's going to be folks vying for this. If you go through the FAQs, you don't have to own a punk to buy the NFT. You just need to own a punk to mint the physical, which also now introduces an entire new group of potential flippers who can enter the scene now, which I think is the most interesting twist on all this. Because initially my thought was there's going to be enough wealthier punk owners to mint this out. Yeah. Now you throw in this anyone can mint, and that's a totally different ballgame. And now I think that accelerates the mint out, and it will make for an interesting week of secondary. And I think you and I were talking about this. Maybe one negative is not the right word, but one aspect I want to change about this drop is not closing the physical bridge after 1 week. So the way this is going to work is if you want the physical piece, you have to choose to make it within 7 days. And then essentially the window closes, which, as we were talking, kind of makes the NFT much less valuable or almost worthless, really, if the window is closed forever. So that
did they say forever?
Or did they just say?
Because I've thought about that side of it. And if it wasn't forever, I should have looked into it. But Yeah, my thought was if it closes in a week and that's like this portion of it, and then if you still hold the NFT, say like 6 months from now, then they do, instead of, a pendant, you can have it like a watch or a bracelet or some, a different piece of jewelry in the future, because you have to think, if it's not redeemed, like how many of these won't get redeemed? That'll be one question. But then if it's not redeemed, what's the point of then buying the NFT later? You just get the image that is going to be custom to a punk. The other side of it is like, you don't need a punk in order to buy this, but like, if like, how could you do that? I don't know. Would someone buy and then wear a punk but not own one? Wouldn't that just kind of be like a weird
Probably
situation?
not. Right. I mean, these are very specific jewelry pieces,
Mhm.
right, that are meant to kind of align with the NFT. But the use case I love, and I saw some accounts talking about this yesterday on Twitter, is this is a new way of launching luxury physical goods. So let's take Rolex for example. Let's say Rolex wants to drop 1,000 limited edition, certain type Rolexes in 3 months from now. Instead of just making it a physical only sale, they could launch it as NFTs, and then they could potentially even keep the window open longer if they're open to that. And then there's a real secondary trading market, which collectors, in my opinion, will eventually flock to once they realize how much easier it is to buy and sell
Yeah.
NFTs, digital goods, versus physical. And let's say 25% get redeemed right off the bat. There's still 75% of the tokens available. Now they're a little bit more scarce. Potentially the price goes up. So I mean, if you think about all the different collectors who are probably just going to buy those physical goods to store them and not really wear them anyway, again, I think that the use case makes a ton of sense, and I love that this is opening the door for that,
Yeah.
which is probably my one of my biggest takeaways for this. Second is, man, how much more valuable are punks? And now people are maybe thinking Bored Apes next in line
Yeah.
as who are the elite NFT sets who are going to benefit the most from these brand collabs. And clearly punks right off the bat, but I think everyone's kind of thinking Bored Apes probably the next one.
Yeah.
Um, this is why I think we could see this Tiffany's drop spark an NFT run, starting at the top end sets like punks and apes, and then if any, as we know, big action up there can trickle down into like the mid tiers and the other sets as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting, and that's one of the big pieces of FUD I've seen, though, is, is this just pushing this narrative that's out there for people that are against NFTs, who think it's just all for the high end collector. Like, this is not something that a new person can come in and just buy. It's not something that is necessarily a quick flip either. Like, that was one post I had, is like, are a lot of people that were funding this are mad that they can't buy it for 30 and sell it for 31 20 minutes after. Like, that's part of it as well, because this is one that the high end collectors will want and will be paying higher dollar amounts for. So, if what you projected is right, and these do sell out instantly, let's say even within 5 minutes, if there's bots involved, that sort of thing, and then people that do want it end up paying 50 ETH, and you just make 15, 20 ETH on this, like, that is a possibility on these. Like, if you have a lot of ETH in your on the sideline, like, as you mentioned, like, this could, if taken well, spark a little run here, because there are going to be people that buy that. But then the question is, like, what are they then turning those funds into? Or are they just going to take them back off chain? That's the secondary question to that. But yeah, I agree. I think there are some other Web2 brands that have tried to do stuff like this. It hasn't really hit all that much. I think one thing that they have on their side here, the X factor, is this high cost. I think
Mm-hmm.
that made it everyone's like, oh, 30 ETH. And then all of a sudden it's, the engagement farming of it, where everyone just talks about how much it is, they're memeing it, this, that, versus if they came out and they were 5 ETH, people would call it a cash grab as well. But it wouldn't necessarily have the same impact. So they're showing like, this is for a high-end collector. Like, we're not trying to hide that. Like, we're 30 ETH. There's only 250 of these. These are an exclusive. And that part of it, I think, is pretty good in the long term, versus if they came out and did 10,000 at 1 ETH a piece. So we'll see on that end. But what do you think as far as the fudders who are saying, oh, this is just for high-end collectors, it's not fair in that sense?
So, I mean, this is obviously this is clearly a niche market that Tiffany's is going after here. Right? This is not Tiffany's trying to get a mainstream NFT collector base, into their store, into their brand. Like that's not what this is, right? They are turning their luxury brand into the digital space and going after one of the wealthier NFT collector bases, and that makes total sense to me. Is this for everyone? Absolutely not. But it's to me it's the first step, right? It's a major brand entering the space using the technology. We always talk about the technology and how like no one's using it. All we get are these different cartoon animal PFPs. This is a real use case of NFTs as a technology. It is essentially a ticket to a luxury physical good. And then now we can start toggling the price down, right? Like maybe Nike does $400 shoes as with a token gated NFT drop like this, right? Now that's much more accessible to everyday traders. So I think that's why, to me, there's really only one way to look at this, and it's positive. So I've been fairly dismissive of the flutter. So I hope people can at least try to see the good that may come out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good take. Then as far as like where this will trickle is going to be interesting to watch. Like, as you mentioned, right now it seems like it's trickling to punks. But if another like Bored Ape Yacht Club comes in, then it'll start tripling there. So one other point I just wanted to make on this before we switched off is another piece of FUD and people calling it cash grab. The counter to that is this is a brand that makes $4 to $5 billion in revenue a year. This drop is to net them like 15 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that big as far as their whole year goes. And so it's a little less as far as like a cash grab for me because of that metric. Whereas if they were a company that say, this is their second year in existence and they try to come out with something like this, it looks a lot more so like a cash grab in that sense. So yeah, I mean, this is a high-end brand. They're asking for 50 grand for a customized piece of jewelry, which I don't know exactly the prices of Tiffany's, but I would guess a lot of their customized stuff is 5 digits, at least in US dollar terms. So I don't think this is at as much of a premium as initially thought when people see that 30 ETH number. Like, there's not many projects that have a 30 ETH floor, so it seems high from that lens. So we'll see where this goes. Oh, go ahead.
I think that's a big piece of it too. Like, this is custom jewelry, and Tiffany's doesn't really make a whole lot of custom bespoke jewelry. And from the people that I've heard who are much closer to the luxury goods space than I am, they say like it's actually a really good deal for 30 or 50,000 having a brand like them make you a custom piece. But we got to answer the main question we haven't talked about, Lou. Would you rock one of these if you were, assuming you were a punk owner? Would you rock one of the Tiffany pendants?
The tough part for me with all of this is it depends on how many punks you have. That's what it would be for me. Because I think if I had multiple punks, I'm more likely to hold an actual forever punk. But the hard part for me here, whenever you spend up this much for something that's customized physical, like I try to do that with the lower end stuff. Like if say there was a custom Moonbird design, and that's what, like, with the fanny pack stuff, I kind of like that it's a fanny pack versus like a custom model of specific to my Moonbird, because then if you ever sell it, you like feel bad about selling it because you have this physical aligned with it. So that would be my issue with buying one of these. I think there's a lot more of these punk holders who are, when they say this is my forever punk, bean it. But that's one utility side to this that a lot of projects haven't really found the best way to do it. Like, what happens if you sell it? Can you only sell it if you also prove a transaction that you shipped this item to someone or you destroyed it? This is something that Carlini had had mentioned before. I see that maybe you're required to destroy it before you can even list it. That's another thing that has come up as a question. Like, what happens on the transfer of the NFT or the transfer of the original NFT? Because are these going to, the redeem of it, is that technically burning the NFTiff?
I don't think they're considering it a burn because you will be holding the NFT as like that certificate of authenticity still.
So you still would have the original NFT.
I
Yeah.
believe so. Yeah.
So that's also interesting because it's not actually tied to your punk. Like, if you sold the punk, this NFT wouldn't go with it, which some collections have been doing now. Like the Space Doodles do it, the Goons have it with some of their stuff. So I think that side of it will be interesting to see how they handle. But yeah, Friday is going to be a wild day, and if what you're saying is right, then it could create somewhat of a weekend bull next week. And maybe it's August or for NFTs might come to fruition for a little bit there. So we'll see how that goes. August 5th, that's on Friday at, I believe it's 10 a.m. drop Eastern time.
Yep.
So relatively early in the day, which will mean there's going to be pretty much a full day of trading after that. And obviously over the week, we'll see what it ends up being. I would guess floor, if it does sell out pretty quickly, will be above 50. Like, I don't think you'll be able to get it for less than 50 on secondary. But if these people are truly trying to customize this for their own punk, I wouldn't be surprised if this floor rises above the punk floor, which is kind of interesting if that happens. Usually in these types of cases, the OG will hold above. But we saw it with the goblins recently, the closing of the two floors. So what would you, let's say on Monday, next Monday when we're out here on the show, what would you expect the floor price to be?
I love your analysis there. And I admittedly haven't kind of thought that out too far yet. I think a big key is if it's going to get botted or taken too much by people who aren't punk owners. Like, that would be one thing that could potentially tank this a little bit. But assuming that doesn't happen, and it's a little bit more of a fair auction, bid, mint process, I think I could see 50 plus. You're right. And like the supply side, like 250 is so low. And especially if these get into some of the true diamond hand collectors' hands, like they're not going to move again. So, the true supply may be even lower. We don't have a whole lot to base this on, as we haven't had that many, pure luxury good projects tied to NFTs before. But it's also something that maybe it makes your punk more valuable. If you can
sell them together.
If you're one of the 250 punks that also has the Tiffany's NFT and pendant, maybe some people start to look at them as a package deal and
premium of 50 ETH or something.
And maybe talking through right now, maybe there is more. Maybe there is some secondary interest beyond this week because of that. It's going to be a little bit hard to manage logistically, but people will figure that out. So I'm with you. I'm calling for 50 plus on Monday.
Yeah, because if 500 people want this and it's max 3 in a wallet, even if it doesn't get botted, like if 500 people want this, that's 2 times the amount of people than the supply already. So there'll be some demand, and as we know, like the punks are the ones that generally, if they're going to be whales with a ton of ETH that are willing to spend 50 ETH on something that, I mean, look at some of the ape punks, thousands of ETH, like 30 ETH is nothing to them if they're going to buy one of these for 2,500, like we saw a couple weeks ago. Like what's another 30 on top of that? So I think that's something we'll see. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the gas fees. I don't know. Gas fees have gotten pretty low recently. Did you see that earlier in the week? They got to like 2 or 3. Yeah, and Willis is asking, I don't think they have any sort of allow list on this, right? He's asking how many total punk holders. I don't think that they have, you need a punk in order to get in this drop. They should. Do you think they should? I would think they should to get in on the drop, but not necessarily secondary.
I think so. I think you're opening yourself up to more negative outcomes, opening it up to a broader buyer pool. I guess the flip side is there are a lot of people who have their punks in cold storage who want access to this. And then how are you going to get over that hurdle? So it's just easier to open it up versus having some kind of other verification, even though you have to get through that. They do have a verification process for that, for the actual minting of the physical, the forging, if you want to call it that. So I guess that would be maybe the rationale to do it. I don't love it. I wish it was closed, actually, just for punk owners. I mean, that's who this drop is for.
Yeah.
So why even, let kind of Trader Joe over here come in and try to rent seek 10 or 20 ETH off this? But, inevitably we're going to see that now. Yeah. And the amount of that is probably going to dictate how the market treats this.
Yeah, I thought I saw, and I don't want to be quoted on this because I'm not sure if it's 100% correct, but I thought I saw 100 of the supply maybe saved off in that sense, potentially for punk holders. I thought I saw the number of 100 will be kind of reserved. But yeah, I'm seeing around 3,600 punk holders itself. Okay. Of that, I don't know what they're like 50 to 100 of them that are like dead wallets. There's some that have it multi-walleted. So it's in that like 3 to 3,500 range of holders. So, let's say if it's 3,500 like true holders, it's still only around 7% of the holders that could even have a chance to have one of these. So you got to think that the top 5% of them are people that might be interested in wanting one as well. So this will be a good one to watch on Friday. We'll see how it affects the rest of the market.
For sure.
So let's look a little at some of the other projects right now that are doing well. We have the potatoes, which they ran, I think last Monday when we were talking about them, they were at 0.6. So they got up to 1.4 or so, pretty much doubled in the given week. They still don't have too many that are listed for sale. They had that Spaces, which didn't say anything too crazy on it or anything that's very different. But they're up over 1. They broke that threshold, and they have announced this stake to win for this one, where basically you can stake your potatoes, and they will have different weekly prizes. You can unstake it at any time, and they also said the more that you stake, the longer that you stake, this will increase your odds. Some people also are thinking that this is going to increase your odds of getting on the meme land allow list as well. What's your thoughts here? Because we don't usually see this with mint passes, but it's one of those things where it's something we've seen before happen, but not particularly in this way. Are the prizes going to come out to be good enough that it's better than just selling your 1 ETH asset? So what's your take on the stake to win on these potatoes?
Yeah, so I'm a little biased, but I love how Meme Land and the potatoes have been kind of rolling out, features and updates. I feel like they're taking some existing mechanisms and making them a little bit different, more fun, more interesting. So certainly we've seen staking in the NFT space before. They're not doing anything new, but now they've got this these weekly prizes that are kind of a new aspect. You're now staking. What we think is you're staking for raffle tickets, which are eventually going to offer shots at the Meme Land captains, which is kind of the end goal of all of this. But now you also have some side prizes, which are interesting. I feel like this is the piece of this tweet which I don't fully understand, and I haven't really seen too many market reactions to this. Like the trophy equals 2x. Does that mean 2 raffle tickets? Does it mean 2 Meme Land captains? Like what does this mean?
Yeah.
This was announced just a few hours ago. The market hasn't gone down since this. I think what's been interesting with the price action with potatoes, it's been hot on the weekends. So this one kind of ran Friday to Sunday. Actually, Friday to Saturday was the big move. It crushed through the 1 ETH wall. That's about 1.2, 1.3. Kind of steady at 1.4 most of Sunday. It's down about 20% today. I'm interested if that's just kind of aligning with the general market trends where kind of people wake up Monday and Tuesday and just undercut, trying to free up funds for the week, or if it's more indicative of a different buyer pool who is only kind of buying and trading NFTs on the weekend because they're busy during the week. So no real, I haven't done the on-chain analysis to try to figure that out. But that's just been kind of an interesting thing I've noted with the Meme Land. And I don't know if this was a change to their website this past week, but if you go to their site for the potatoes page, they now have this potatoes grow section. The wording's all kind of blanked out, but we see kind of a preview of maybe what's to come. And it looks like a little potato character with arms and legs. And for those who may have missed our last show, another interesting feature of this is they're rolling out metadata and traits, as this process goes on. So anyone who has a floor right now might be able to get a rare trait in the next stage of the evolution, which kind of props up the value of the floor and kind of continues to give holders, a shot at a rare and some more potential upside, which I think is also really smart.
Yeah, I think the other piece from the spaces, which I think I mentioned this last week as well, but they did say the poop is not going away. That is a clear, just one of the core pieces to their traits. That's what they want involved with this. I mean, they're called Meme Land. They come from, 9gag is a very meme heavy website. I think that they're just going with that, and memes in general are something that generally can do well in NFTs, but this is like coming from a massive brand, 500,000 followers on the Meme Land account, which doesn't always lead to success. But I think 9gag has like 15 million followers or something. So it's definitely a website that is massive, and yeah, they have a huge following. People like the brand itself. So this is one of the newer projects that people keep talking about. Like, we need a legit project. This does seem like it's more in the end of legit. They will likely have connections, and they have such a big web. So potatoes is one that currently in this market, like, I'm not surprised that it's holding up compared to some of these other ones that are either slowly dripping or have other issues surrounding them. We saw Mystics. Once they revealed, they just started dropping in price. Potatoes revealed to nothing special really, and have gone up in price, and it's just showing they're giving the value back to holders. So yeah, this is an interesting one that I don't know. I keep going back and forth if I want more exposure to it, if I want to sell, if I want to buy. Now that it's over one, it's so weird how that works with some of these, but now it becomes more tempting because it broke that threshold of 1 ETH. So let's see.
Interesting psychology, because I'm a top 10 holder, so I'm mega long.
Oh wow,
These.
I didn't realize you had that many of these.
So it's one of my bigger bets. So I'll try not to be too biased on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, so Jay's asking, do we still think they have room to grow? Well, I just kind of revealed my personal thoughts.
Yeah.
Yes.
You think so?
I mean, to me, it's a bit of calculus on kind of working backwards from what you think meme land captains could potentially be worth. This is the primary entry point to that project at this point. We see when you look at this ecosystem, the MVP, you're the real MVP, is holding like a 34 ETH floor right now. I want to say they're promised 2 of the meme land captains.
What's the supply on those?
Let's see if we can find those.
Because there's a few different ones, right?
420 of these. I think they continue to give them away somewhat as prizes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe these are some of those
29
prizes
offer
from staking.
Yeah.
Which that if that comes out as one of the, oh man, if they give a prize and it's one of these that are worth 30 ETH as one of the prizes for staking, then I mean, blast off for potatoes, right? If that's something that you can win from it. I don't know if they would do that. That seems like it's too good of a prize.
Who knows, right? But as Jay's saying, he thinks the staking comes around and there's an opportunity to get whitelist. We see a run. I think a lot of people think that. I certainly do. We've seen staking can have good and bad consequences for projects. Ultimately, you still have to have demand for the supply, or staking doesn't matter. Like Wizards has staking; it doesn't matter. That project's kind of tanking right now. It was huge for Moonbirds up front, though. Like when people knew that when nesting was coming, that week ahead of nesting was when the crazy price action happened. Mm-hmm. Which I think if we got a date announced for potato staking, I think we would probably see some similar, like nothing to the scale of what we saw with Moonbirds, but I think we would see some action. And then, but to me, like I keep thinking, like, what's a good recent drop to kind of peg a price? Maybe like Invisible Friends, right? Invisible Friends came out of the gate at 11 to 12 ETH, kind of dipped to 7, 8, after the first few days of trading. That was 5,000 supply. I feel like this is every bit as hyped, if not more hyped than that. And then now you're just kind of working backwards. What's the calculus on how many potatoes equals a guaranteed shot at a captain? Once you figure that out, kind of gives you your price targets. So that's kind of how I've been looking at it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of thinking of it. So this is one to watch. And with just the attention nature to NFTs, if this one goes from 1 to 2, then that's where all the eyes are going to be on. People are going to say, whoa, well, you have the potential of winning 30. Like, where else can you get that elsewhere? And it's one of those things where now that it's over 1, I think people are already thinking that way as well. Like I FOMO'd in because of it. I had previously looked at lower levels, but wasn't really sure. But it does seem like every time they've done something, it's been, well, price action tends to go down once they announce something, which has been weird. But it seems like when they are announcing something, like it's not the worst thing I've ever heard. Some of these projects, they're like, oh, we're announcing, we're going to do spaces to just scream for 20 minutes. At least they're not doing that sort of thing. That was sort of the meta since Goblins had success with it. Yeah. So interested to see what happens with the potatoes moving forward. They seem to be right now one of the better low-end bets. They're newer. That's the shiny new toy effect versus some others that are going downward in price in or around 1 ETH. So, and sort of the takes on the potatoes. Did you want to talk about this art box from today?
Sure. Yeah,
sold out at what, 0.8 or so? I think it was slightly under 1 ETH, right?
Yeah, most people probably paid 0.85 to 0.95.
So Schwembilder, am I saying that right?
Schwembilder, yeah.
Schwembilder. This is the story behind this is kind of interesting. Basically, he is naming this after the private investigator on the case where he got arrested from the Latvian police. Did I explain that correctly?
That is correct.
And the artwork looks very similar to a Ringers. It's a playground drop, which, as we know in the past, playground historically of the three performs worst. There's 500 of these. Some of them were being sold before yesterday. When the original, if you had a TBOA, you were able to mint these. And then around 75 of them were sold before public.
About 70.
Yeah. And a couple were above 3 ETH. So it's sitting slightly above the floor. Are you ready to call this a successful playground drop? Do you think this has room to grow?
I'm so tilted by this drop, and I still don't have a very good read on it. So first, just quick background. I think I've got Schvim's tweet up. So he came out with this just last week. It feels a lot longer ago. But he kind of releases the story of everything that's been happening with him, this investigation that's underway in his home country of Latvia, and apparently they've seized his assets. And then here we are a week later, and he's dropping his latest art blocks project. And I've seen some mixed reactions from folks. I'll kind of focus in the art blocks Discord. It seems to be mostly positive. People kind of heaping praise on Schvim as a prolific artist. He's prolific as I want to say this is his 5th art blocks project. He also launched 5 to 6 projects himself that are just out on OpenSea, as well as a lot of kind of sets of 3, sets of 6 pieces on sites like Foundation. So he's probably created more generative art for sale in the past year than any other artist that I'm aware of. So I think prolific is a nice way to describe it. And one of the challenges I had was, and you kind of called it, it's got Ringers vibes. To me, it's almost like a Ringers knockoff. But apparently, most of the collectors don't care about that. I've seen quotes like, good artists steal or borrow from, other artists. And then there's the whole kind of fact that, Dimitri's Ringers, in fact, isn't the first art set in that style, that there was actually someone who came before him. And there was a big controversy over that last year. So
people always steal ideas from each other. It's 2022. There's not a ton of uniqueness left out there.
So, I will say I've always enjoyed the Ringer set. I've always been priced out. So I don't own a Ringer. That for actually, just quick side, creeped up to 80 ETH. It's up 30% in this past week. So it had quietly a very strong week. I really like the artistic style on this set. I like the color palettes he used. An interesting thing that some of the more passionate collectors have been doing in the last hour or two is looking for patterns in these where they look like animal characters. Like some look like birds, others look like an elephant or a rabbit. So people have been kind of seeking those and kind of chasing like the Ringers. What's the golden goose sold for 1,500 ETH last summer? Of course, these aren't going to fetch those types of prices, but there's a lot of folks who think this set has legs. It's part of the reason it's been tilting to me is a few. So Schvim's Genesis project Alien Clock is just a 1.88 ETH floor. His curated the blocks of art, I want to say, is like 2 or 3 ETH. I haven't checked on it today. Then he's got, Alien DNA is a 1.64. He's got Alien Insects, which is like a 0.4 floor. So it's kind of hard to set where, a potential floor price or ceiling for this could be. And then just like every other art blocks drop for the past 3 weeks, tons of flippers, traders, 50% of the supply listed within 10 minutes of sellout. So that led to some volatile price action. We saw the floor dipped to about 0.7, and then it rebounded back to 1. Now it's kind of seems to be hovering around this 0.9. It's, for mentors, is this a win? It feels like a break even. Feels like a neutral result.
Yeah.
Like no one's down bad on this, which compared to the last 5 drops, a lot of people were, wrecked. So no one's wrecked on this one. but I don't know where we go from here. I really don't have a good read on this. Like we've seen some serious collectors kind of come in, but not too many. We haven't seen too many high end sales. So this is going to be an interesting one to continue to watch here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way to think of it. Like a lot of the playgrounds are of somewhat more unknown artists. So I think that's why a lot of them perform worse. I wish, and it's always hard to do any sort of analytics with art blocks, but I wonder if they at some point in time could put like a factor based on the artist that has to do with, oh, this is how their other art has fared. Because as you mentioned earlier, like this is one of the more, as you worded it, not necessarily prolific, but has a wide portfolio of generative art. So it's pretty widely known as an artist. And going into Playground, if this was Factory, would it have been basically the same? I think probably in this case, but there are definitely artists on Playground that if you haven't really heard much about them, they aren't going to perform because it has the Playground attached to it versus a Factory or curated. In that regard, if this was a curated drop, it probably would have gone, I don't know, do you think it would have gone at 2+?
Yes.
Potentially? Yeah. So like it's just so funny how that works with art blocks where just the name attached to which set it's in holds a decent amount of value to it.
And I never necessarily understood the Playground FUD. Like these are artists who are proven that they can do curated sets. Curated is just their, genesis or first. But we've certainly seen some artists who have better work in Playground than they're curated. But maybe because that's more the minority, the majority tends to be worse. I don't know, but it definitely has caught a bad rap recently. I don't want to say that was the case a year ago, so that's changed a bit.
Yeah. So I wanted to get into the last piece that we'll talk about with Proof and the Grails, but I just wanted to bring up Mike's comment here. He's saying NFTiff pricing is low. Anything from the custom department at Tiffany requires tons of prior purchases, and they start at 100K. That's something that we didn't really specifically talk about, but that's one thing that I think a lot of people didn't understand. This is I don't want to call it membership into Tiffany's, but it's also like there's an exclusivity side to purchase at something like this at Tiffany's already. And your barrier to entry isn't even owning the CryptoPunk. Unless what we said about the 100 is true. But yeah, it's almost like your barrier to entry here is way lower than if you went to Tiffany's and wanted to do this yourself. So there's that factor, which we didn't specifically talk about earlier, but that I think, as we did mention, like the initial reaction was, wow, it's overpriced. But as you think about it more and more, yeah, it seems like a smash at that price. If it's something that you wanted already, and just in general, like this is one of the utilities, real world utilities, even though it's still a high end, that the real world side of it looks accurately, if not cheaply priced. And NFTs are allowing people to get access to that. So
absolutely.
Let's talk about Proof. So today they are coming out with the Grails website. They had some details in Discord. I'm not sure if they specifically mentioned anything. However, this is another one of the brands, if we want to call it brands, projects in an NFT space that I could see doing something like that, Tiffany's. Hey, maybe that's what Gold Nest ends up being. But Proof also posted this little teaser with the Grail picture, and they have mentioned, I believe that the dates today is when the Grail site is launching. I'm not sure, has it launched yet? I didn't see
I
a
haven't seen any
secondary
messages about their site launching yet.
Yeah, I know that they were planning on it. It looks like, yeah, the only announcement that I've seen around, besides this little teaser image, was that NFT Statistics, the Punk 9059 is going to be joining Proof as a director of research, is what they're calling it, using sort of analytics to power the Proof ecosystem and creating them as the best platform to extend to the wider audience. So that's another addition, another piece of news in the Proof ecosystem today. And then, yeah, so Grails basically in the next few days, I think people have thought it's going to be on Friday. Not sure if that's going to happen, if it might change because of the Tiffany stuff. But they've said in the next few days, if you have the Grail trait on your Moonbird, you will be airdropped one of these mint passes in order to get Grails 2. So the first round of Grails still sitting at about 1.5 Ethereum floor. I think it got up to about, I don't know, 5 or 6 ETH floor, but depending on what you got, like some of the rarer stuff, there was one from Larva Labs, there's one from like Tyler Hobbs, which those hold higher floors and have sold at premium. So there have been a couple Grail sales on Moonbirds above floor, like above 30 ETH, over the past week since this was leaked, announced, however you want to word it. Once it became known that this was going to be the case, so there was a couple of premium Moonbird sales for that. And now people are wondering what Grails 2 is going to be. Hopefully there'll be some bigger announcement when this website comes through with some of the more details. But the timeline looks to be, it'll be revealed by the end of August. So you'll have a mint pass. They'll have like a week where people can trade the mint pass. And then you'll be able to mint later in the month and then reveal later in the month. So they're going to do this, I'd assume, before that Proof conference at the end of August will happen. So what's your thoughts on Grails 2?
Huge event for the Proof ecosystem. As you mentioned, I think part of the upside on Grails for those who aren't in it for the art, and certainly Proof launched as kind of a group for more serious collectors who were in it for the art. And then it's kind of grown from there. And I think the Moonbirds is kind of maybe it's made the ecosystem larger and probably changed the dynamics a little bit. But from a trading perspective, the upside is in the rarity. So the floor right now not that great on Grails, but as you mentioned, it was probably 4 or 5 ETH back when it launched, and then we saw some of these really high end sales. Protoglyphs sold for 75 and 80 ETH. We also saw, I want to say this is Hobbs's. This is either Hobbs or Dimitri. I think Hobbs did the wall, and I think Dimitri did this piece. These sold for 32, 35. So some top name artists came out for Grails 1. I think we've gotten some hints for Grails 2. I don't know that we've really seen too much. I have not been paying super attention. I will say just quick commentary on the Grail Moonbirds. I think they're trading at too high of a premium. The Moonbirds floor is 19. The Grails floor is like 32.5. So you're going to price in 13 ETH value for Grails 2, essentially, and then maybe you're pricing in all the future Grails releases as well. 13 feels a little high to me, Lou, for something that's probably going to have a 1 to 2 ETH floor, but with a rare lotto. It feels like fair market value should be closer to 5 or 6. Of course, we'll see when the mint pass comes out, what the true floor will be pre-reveal.
Yeah, and the other side of Moonbirds when it comes to these types of things, you're not just buying that premium for the Grail. Like you're also buying in what's opposite of premium. It has some value lost because it's unnested for you to make that purchase.
I didn't think about that.
You're then like, yeah, it's something that I've been thinking about with like this section of time where to buy it now, you are, whatever, 10 days behind other nesting rewards, which could hurt in the future. Did the snapshot already happen?
Oh, is it a snapshot? I thought it was just whoever was holding at the time. So I admittedly haven't been following the Moonbird Grail piece super closely.
Oh, yeah, okay. I just thought because it looked like the prices had dropped, but that's $29.97 for the bottom one, so it's not that low. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think it's interesting to see that like most of these are what they call the nude birds that have the grails. So it's interesting, like those are the ones that people are listing. It's hard to sort of try and flip this into this drop, as you mentioned. Like, what are you expecting the secondary for the grails to be? Like, they had a pretty heavy list of artists for grails 1. So how many and how good can grails 2 really be in comparison? So hard to say that it's that 10 ETH premium, but it's also the thought that there will probably be more of these grail sets. So maybe you're thinking, oh, I get 2 or 3 of these if I hold them long term. So that could be part of the premium as
Which is
well.
very fair.
One other thing that people have been doing recently with these is there have been a lot of delisted. There were some sales going in like the 17s last few days. Now listings has gone back down and the floor has gotten back over 19. So I think people are also somewhat expecting there to potentially be a different update that comes with this, and either nest it again or don't want to lose out on that potential of maybe if you have a bird nested, you know, how many grails were there? There can't be too many of them.
176.
Yeah, 176. So maybe they make this set 250. And if you have a nested bird or you already hit silver nest, you are in a raffle for the other 80 slots.
Like
so I think some people have looked into that as well. Like that's one thing I've been thinking about. Like, how else can they give these sort of values? And obviously we saw that with the potatoes, but I think raffles into some of this stuff that, oh, you missed out because you didn't have a grail, but oh, because you didn't have a grail, you have a 1 in 100 chance of still getting it. Still adds some little amounts of value, but I think that's another way of them getting involved with the community. So we'll see how that goes. If anything else comes up, but was there anything else that you might have missed that you were hoping to touch on today? Or?
No, I think we mostly covered it. Just quickly in my weekly preview article, since there's basically no mints this week. So luckily Tiffany's came in. We had today's art block, so it's already behind us. There's a few more art blocks drops on the factory side later this week. So watch those, but the secondary action has been pretty poor lately. The free mint meta seems to be over, at least temporarily. You know, they've been performing terribly on the secondary market. You know, the window to get out of those has just become increasingly small and small. And I think people have just finally stopped. So because of that, new products just aren't launching. So with that, I think focus is going to begin to shift to products on the secondary. You know, we touched on a few that are interesting with Proof and Moonbirds and the potatoes. I think a few others that I'm watching. One, Bored and Dangerous from the Jenkins the Ballet team. I've just anecdotally noticed a big uptick in their Azurbala narrative. I've seen an uptick in kind of the whales and the ape community starting to talk about that project. The floor is kind of creeping up a little bit. So I think this is one that is a longer term safe bet. It's a team that's been building. It's got some big names attached to it. So this is one certainly to watch here while everything else is quiet. And then the two of the mints from last week, the Stickman toys from Warner Records and then Ledger, they're coming in week 2 now. Some of the hype has died down from their initial primary sale. Floor starting to dip. Stickman's down about 100% from pre-reveal, which I think was to be expected. These might start getting into buy range. You know, the primary value in these sets is their utility. You know, for Ledger, getting access to their marketplace and the curated projects and artists that they're going to bring in. And then for the Stickman, future access to whatever Warner Records and Bose might come out with. So for Stickman especially, throw the look of the reveal out the window. I mean, this is now a utility play. So I think those are becoming attractive here around 0.15. That's a set to watch. Ledger is also down from its local highs, sitting around 0.47 this morning. So I think those are two interesting ones. And I also wouldn't be surprised if we see some announcements about their future plans here this week or next as things are quiet. So pay attention to those if you've got nothing else going on.
Yeah, that's a good take on some of those. It does seem like these random degen mints, as people say, that get botted, and it's just like they come out free. They just sort of never get to 0.02, and if they do, like we saw that with what was it, the rare ape pepes, if that's how you say them. They burst through. They got to 0.06, but then once it slowed down a little bit, they just got right back to 0.03, and it's like just people have such short attention spans with those types of mints now that it's really hard for any of them to truly run or become much of any sort of project. So it's almost like the ones that charge you a little more on the initial are more likely to stay around because people are spending more to get into it and not just buying 100 of them for 0.25 or whatever. So I think that's a big piece of it. So we'll see. We'll be back on Thursday to discuss a little more about this. We'll probably touch on Tiffany. Hopefully we get some more information, if there is any more information on those and the grails. But besides that, just don't watch the ETH chart today too much compared to last time we were on. It was like definitely watch it. But I mean, holding up still pretty well. It's a lot better than a month ago. So good luck out there. Have a nice little week, and we'll see you guys back here on Thursday.